Since we talked about exponents, one really important thing to know is the use of brackets because brackets actually help us in telling the person, are you including a sign or not a sign? So what I mean by that is, let's not use this example with A, but say if you wanted to have a base of -3 and to the power of 2. And if we were to look at, say, 3 to the power of 2 and something with brackets, -3 and 2. When you look at this, you can see that, well, one has negatives and one doesn't have negatives. And you can see that, well, 3, if I were to write this in expanded form, would be 3 times 3. This is 9. But how are these two different? We have one that doesn't have brackets and this one that has brackets. What brackets, how I would like to think about it is that your brackets are just like a little box, and everything inside of this box is going to be your base. It doesn't matter what it looks like inside the box. So this little 3 is inside this box, and that includes the negative sign. This one doesn't have a little bracket or box in there, so that means it doesn't have brackets. So this exponent is only looking at that base. So basically your negative stays outside of it, and you have 3 times 3, which gives you an answer of -9. But because for this example you have a box, so the box surrounds this, so instead of the negative on the outside, you have -3 times -3. Because the bracket includes the two signs, and you know that negative and a negative gives you a positive, so your final answer actually gives you a +9. So it's really important because when you don't have brackets, you have to really watch out for the negative sign that is sort of hanging out on the outside. So to give you another example here is that, what if I had, let's just move to the next one. So if I had a bracket -3/4 to the power of 2, and then if I were to just have 3/4 to the power of 2, these two actually are very, very different because the box or the brackets actually include this entire fraction and the negative sign. So that means that this, if we were thinking about the photocopy example, this entire thing is being photocopied. So I'm going to say -3/4, close bracket, and another one, because this whole thing is being photocopied. And how many times do I do this? 2 times. That's why I have 2 copies. Whereas this one, I have the negative sign on the outside, so it's actually not included with this exponent. I know it's kind of confusing, but that's something you just sort of remember, because people invent the brackets really for this reason, to tie in with the signs. So since you don't have the bracket, your negative stays out, and 3 to the power of 2 is 9. And since this 4 is not even part of this, 4 is not even multiplied by itself. That's why we have brackets, because if we wanted to have the entire fraction to be included, we would put the brackets and box it up. This one gives you 9/16. So you can see that there's a big difference, because if you don't have brackets, then it only includes this section. If you have brackets, then you have everything. So it doesn't matter if you have, say, something like 7x plus ay to the power of 3. Later on, you will encounter these kind of problems, and this means that everything inside the brackets is multiplied by 3 times. So you don't even have to think about it, as long as whatever is inside the brackets, you repeat itself and sort of photocopy it. So one really handy trick about brackets, I know I'm getting a lot of information here. Say you have a -1, and then you have something like 10, and then -1 with brackets, you have something like 101. Well, in order to figure out these ones, you have to write in expanded form. But a shortcut is, because this number is 10 and this is 101, what I mean by that is this number is actually even. So when it's even, you actually get a positive number, because if you were to write it out, your negatives actually cancel out with each other and form your positive. However, when you have an odd number, you actually have your -1 because you would have all the even ones cancel out to make it positive, and your last remaining negative will make everything negative. So that's one good trick. So another example here is, say this is 7, this is odd, so I know it's going to be -1. If I have -1, 28. 28 is an even number, so I know that it's going to be +1. One thing to caution is that if this one does not have brackets, this would not work because the negative sign would just hang out on the outside, and then 1 would just be 1. So you would have to have brackets in order for this rule to work. So I basically told you a lot of information in this video. Hopefully you can grasp all of this. So here's 50. So that's still -1. Okay, so recap. Even ones, if you have brackets, all the negatives will cancel each other to make positive. If you have odd number, your last negative number will stand out, which makes everything negative. This only applies if you have brackets, so odd, negative, even, positive. No brackets, this does not work. So this is the first video on exponents and powers. Check out the next one for the laws.